Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTV World. They say that we don't have a society if we destroy our very environment. Now, when we do talk about Lahore's current smog crisis, unfortunately, we do see it destroying the very core of our environment. And this is something upon which we'll be shedding light during the course of today's conversation. We'll not only be talking about smog as a very pressing environmental concern, but we'll also be talking about the fact that how is smog actually also, for that matter, a social and economic issue too. We'll be talking about smog as it does impact the Pakistani society. In this regard, we'll also be shedding light upon the fact that when we do talk about tackling Lahore's smog crisis, what laws and policies have actually been passed to do the same. In this regard, we'll also be talking about not one, rather various landmark judgments by superior courts in Pakistan, all of which have gone leaps and bounds to ensure that everybody does get climate justice. Last but not the least, we'll also be shedding light upon the fact that when we do talk about tackling a Lahore smog crisis, what initiatives has the Punjab caretaker government taken in this regard? And when we talk about moving towards a more prevention-oriented approach, what is it that we as a society need to do? All of this today, that too with an extremely relevant panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for today's show is Ms. Imrana Dewana. She's an environmentalist, she's also an urbanist, and she's also a sustainable development specialist. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Alongside her, I have Ms. Mariha Khan. She's an educator and she's also an analyst. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam, and thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. And via telephone line, we'll be joined by Ms. Momi Salim, who's an environmentalist. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show. Now, before we start the discussion on today's show, let's have a look at this brief report.
Smog continues to envelop Lahore and its surrounding areas. Apart from the provincial capital, the airborne hazard is also covering various other districts and cities of Punjab such as Nankana Sahib, Sheikhupura, Kasur, Gujranwala, Gujarat, Sialkot, Hafsabad, Mandi Bhaudin, Narowal, Multan, Faisalabad, Sahiwal and Sargodha. Air quality index in the cities hover between 350 to 450 and even up to 550 AQI in some areas of Lahore such as Mall Road. The Punjab government is closely monitoring the situation, is taking strict action against heavy polluters and crop burners, and plans to impose smart lockdowns where needed. It also has asked the public to take all necessary precautionary measures against smog. The best solution to dissipate smog is by rain. Unfortunately, there are no signs of it in the coming days.
In the coming days, smog will also continue and its intensity will vary because no rain system is expected during a couple of days, and also no strong wind will blow. So you can say that during the coming days, smog is likely to continue, and the AQI level is will remain to very poor level.
Smog can cause or worsen respiratory and cardiovascular diseases such as asthma, bronchitis, and even heart attacks. Its effects extend to irritating eyes, nose, throat, and reducing visibility. It diminishes overall quality of life. It also poses a threat to crops, plants, and buildings and contributes significantly to global warming and acid rain. Experts suggest viable solutions which include enforcing strict emission standards, use of better quality fuel, and regulations for vehicles, industries, power plants, and brick kilns. Increase in use of renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and hydropower is also highly recommended.
Welcome back. We just saw this report. Now, to get the conversation started with you, Momi, my first question to you would be that when we do talk about the causes of course, smog, of which they are not one, rather several, be it that of industrial pollution, be it that of vehicular emissions, or for that matter, increasing urbanization per se too. Why is it this issue more pronounced in winter as opposed to the rest of the year? Because if we are to bifurcate this, then we also understand the fact the causes per se, they are a constant throughout the year.
Smog is only, basically it was coined in 1900s when, of course, the great, smog of London during the Industrial Revolution, we saw that, or we heard about it. So during that time, this smoke and, the fog The two words were mixed to come up with this word. So any air, any fog that suspends the particles and different, of course, hazardous gases, etc. That's basically the hazy look of the air, which is not fog, but has suspended particles and other, harmful gases, is called smog. In winter times, of course, the air is more dense, so you see these particles, they get suspended more quickly. And the more pollution you have, the more smog you have. So it's actually about, I think pollution is there throughout, the season, the year. But it's only because during winter the air is condensed, hence you get this, you see it and it gets suspended. The other thing is that, of course, smog is something which is harmful for humans. So it's very important that we kind of try to reduce this pollution during the year rather than only, we should go on preventive strategies rather than symptomatic.
That's very rightly put by yourself, Momi, because when we do talk about this issue of smog, it is definitely more highlighted because of course, the dense and the stagnant air, that too particularly in the winter season. Madam, I would want you to contribute to this further. So when we do talk about the various causes of smog, we understand that yes, there is not one, rather various causes of the same. To what extent do you feel is overpopulation a very important factor when it comes to tackling smog?
Thank you. I think the first most critical priority that we need today is to understand that we need a cleaner planet and a better quality of life for everyone here.
True.
Unfortunately, Lahore is now in a health emergency and we are breathing toxic, it's like being in a toxic gas chamber. Urbanization, of course, plays a huge role because cities are expanding, and I think I'd like to highlight 4 factors that should be reviewed and critically implemented. The first, of course, is the master plan of our cities, the urban planning. And unless and until we make a boundary, for example, to the city of Lahore, it's expanding every day and we're losing green cover, cars are increasing, the population is increasing. So I think the first thing I would say is that we limit our cities, and like China did, we make secondary and tertiary cities so that we can then have integrated mobility and land use planning in our cities. That's the first one and the most critical one. I'm also a member of the TOR and a supervisory committee of the Lahore Master Plan, and we have said that this now needs to be a people-centric and green and clean city. So I'm happy to report that, also pedestrian-friendly.
Yes.
The second thing is the transport sector. The third is the industrial sector. And the fourth is the energy sector.
Right. And I would also want to add our own lifestyles, because you see all these factors, they are one way or the other externally motivated. A lot of times we should also be very cognizant and mindful of the fact that it is also our unhealthy lifestyle choices which are actually contributing to all these environmental challenges.
And I think that one of the reasons for that is that there is a lack of awareness. People just absolutely do not understand, and I think that's where education and the media
and sensitization
play such a big role in people understanding that what we are breathing today is affecting generations to come.
Right. I feel the positive thing which has emerged over a period of time is the fact we see people generally being more aware climate change, of smog per se, especially the young people here, on which I would want you to add further. So when we do talk about the various causes of smog, one of the most imminent causes, as we all understand, is that of vehicular emissions. So in this regard, how do you feel can we as a Pakistani society move towards more eco-friendly transportation methods, because this is something that we do see happening in other parts of the world?
Well, firstly, both sectors have to collaborate on this issue, both the public and the private sector. The public sector has to encourage the private sector to build eco-friendly cars such as electronic cars, and they must give some incentives and they must incentivize it, they must give some subsidy to the consumers who are buying those cars. So one, I think, good step would be this. And the other is, improving, like Madam said, that improving the, mass transport, improving the public transport sector. That would play a significant role in the reduction of the smog and air pollution in Lahore. But there still, I think, government needs to reduce the import duty and some taxes so that it is still more accessible to general, consumer, across the country. And also they must create some mass awareness regarding their, their use, regarding the benefits that these cars can have. Mention another point, that government should install charging systems across the country so that these cars can be easily charged, and mass awareness should be given, education should be imparted in this regard.
Right, and definitely in this regard, one thing that we must mention is the fact that recently we have seen the Punjab caretaker Chief Minister Mohsin Naqvi Sahab announcing cycling is something for which the Mall Road is going to be open from morning to evening, that too particularly on Sunday. So let's hope that we as a society are able to build that momentum towards cycling. Madam, on which you wanted to add something?
I wanted to add that we have so many policies. We have the EV policy, which is in place. We have the oil refinery policy for clean fuel. We have the Punjab Clean Air Act of 2017.
That's true.
And so implementation, if we were to just start implementing all of this, 83% of the emissions are due to are vehicular right now.
Exactly.
Because we don't have clean petrol. We're still using Euro 2 and Euro 4, 5, 6 and 7. The rest of the world is using, whereas Euro 2 is banned. If we were to ban this, we've done the subsidies and the fuel adjustments, but the refineries have not changed. If there is a ban on this, and if they are asked to do it, within months, you will see Lahore's air will be so much cleaner if we have clean fuel.
Right.
Then I wanted to talk about renewable energy, solar rickshaws. 70% are two-wheelers. They can go on to gas or to EV, reducing the number of vehicles, as has been done in many cities of the world. Buses, public transport should be increased, and they should be put onto EV or solar.
And this is something that we do see happening in other parts of the world. But I would want you to comment on this, Momi. Now, this is something very apt, which both the panelists have actually raised, and this is something on which I would want you to comment further. We do see countries like Denmark actually promoting cycling and using that as a primary mode of transportation. So how do you feel can we as a Pakistani society can move towards perhaps adopting more eco-friendly modes of transportation, be it cycling, be it public transport?
Yes, I think one of the sectors which is contributing most to the greenhouse gases also, as well as to pollution, is the transport sector of Pakistan. Because the quality of fuel is bad, although Euro 5 was introduced, but since it is a little expensive, so of course people kind of do not utilize that. Then we do not have, of course, alternatives to fuel based vehicles, as well as we do not have alternative to alternative to individual car mobility. So we should be able to have, or we should invest more in not road expansion, but we should primarily invest into mass transit. That's very, very important. And not only sometimes, like for example in Islamabad we have this mass transit bus, but what happens is that it's not really connected to each and every street, and in Europe you see it is very well connected. So it's important that we shift our we shift from petroleum to electric vehicle, but not we should be talking about reducing vehicles on the road and really moving towards mass transit, where more people can be transported in one vehicle, and there's less pollution, less emissions.
Definitely. Those are very apt suggestions put for yourself, but in that regard, then we also need to ensure that we do have the right infrastructure so as to be able to implement all these suggestions. Madam, on which I would want you to comment further. So when we do talk about moving towards more eco-friendly public transportation, mass transit, or for that matter even cycling, do you not feel here that Pakistan's socio-cultural context is something that we need to keep in mind as well? Because a lot of times we may come across women who might not be that comfortable cycling on roads from the fear of being harassed publicly.
I think that whenever there is positive change, you will find a resistance because people are not used to a different way. And the way to handle that, as we have seen as we design cities and city centers and public spaces, similarly, the integrated mobility and land use is what will take care of that. And it must happen in a very structured way so
Right.
that everyone is comfortable. For example, we have specific lanes maybe for women and other lanes for men where women feel more comfortable to begin with, and then we can progress from there. We have pedestrian. In Lahore, there are no footpaths. So 90% of the population lives in 10% density, whereas 10% live in 90%. So we are not catering to an inclusive community here. If we were to make footpaths and make it easier, so I think that we need to have an equitable dispensation of resources
Right.
on people-centric, renewable, green cities.
Right. And this should of course be done by prioritizing Lahore or any other city to have safe path pedestrian crossings that way, and
Yes.
in the larger picture also prioritize better urban planning by that yardstick too.
Absolutely,
But when we do talk about smog, that too from the viewpoint of it being a social justice issue, how do you feel does it impact us as a society? Because we do see that over a period of time, of course, educational institutions, they have been closed, then nobody can deny the fact that it is also a very imminent public health concern this way. But what do you feel as an environmentalist is its most grave impact on us as a society?
Well, I think that not providing the basic human rights to people of any country is a criminal offense. And I use it's a strong word. But what is happening in Lahore today is that 1 year of living in Lahore, it is scientifically proven that you lose 7 years of lifespan. 70% increase in the last 10 years in ocular, eye, heart, and pulmonary diseases. It's become a city of hospitals. And I think that the urgency today, where everyone feels it and sees it, is now there for the whole world to see. So I think the impacts are now just hitting us in the face, and we have to have policies where structures are put in place which are not just ad hoc and short term, but they need to be mid and long term. For example, taking factories, giving them subsidies and taking them. So if we were, and I just wanted to say here that we have an action plan that we've prepared, which is ready to roll tomorrow. And I would urge, the government, we would love to work with them.
Madam, we
or
will
give
talk
this
to you
them.
about this. In fact, you must tell us about the substantive proposals as well. But before that, I would want you to add to this. So when we do talk about this, given the social justice context, we do understand the fact that smog is definitely that crisis which unfortunately impacts us disproportionately, and this is true for any other environmental challenge as we do speak.
That's right.
Perhaps it might impact children or the elderly population in worse ways as opposed to the general population. So when it comes to evaluating the impact of smog on us as a society, how do you feel can we as a society have the right policies, the right initiatives in place, that too with the aim of looking after the diverse need of the different parts of the Pakistani population?
Well, firstly, I think there should be inclusive policies, policies in which not only the privileged can benefit, but also the underprivileged. And as ma'am was talking about, developing pathways and improving our public transport, we can also invest in our infrastructure, help and strengthen those weaker areas of the city in which there need to be some there need to be done some infrastructural development.
And then here you see we also need to make the healthcare system more accessible for perhaps the more low income stratas of the society, because if they are impacted by smog, then this becomes a very serious issue for them, rushing to hospitals. It is an added financial burden on the families too.
Yeah, but Fatma, don't you think that talking about healthcare, that is the secondary point. Before we should always think about the preventive measures.
True.
Yeah.
But when we do talk about prevention, how do you propose can we do just that, especially when it comes to our own selves? Because you see the community engagement, local residents, people like ourselves, we also have a very important role to play here.
We can indulge, we as a community can indulge in behavioral changes. We can use different alternatives, other than using individual transport systems. We can indulge in carpooling. We can use renewable energy sources. I've seen many people installing solar panels in their households, which also saves them, saves them the electricity bill, and it is also eco-friendly. So we can indulge
even
in
the fossil fuels that we do use, because you see, one of the reasons why in winters we have so much smog, and madam, you would agree with me on this, is because we are using fossil fuels to heat things up, basically,
Yes.
to keep ourselves warm. So that again is a very important contributory factor. So that's a very valid suggestion put by yourself, on which I'll come to you, Momi, and here we must talk about a very basic question which is often asked, that is that when we do talk about climate change, when we do talk about a smog, how do you feel are both interrelated?
That's a very interesting question you have asked, where climate change and smog, how they are related. So to be honest, climate change can exacerbate smog. Smog is not the cause of climate change, but of course it can exacerbate. And it is, according to estimates, it is said that in future, if you do not really reduce smog, or you do not work towards curbing this, it can lead to summer smog as well. So as temperatures will rise, it is said that we might have more of smog events because of the change in the temperature. So as such, of course, what we need to do as immediate steps is to first and foremost, as I said earlier as well, the transportation sector, for example, we need to revamp that. Not only the use of fuel, the kind of fuel that you use, but also shifting completely from petroleum to either electric vehicle or any other efficient form. And then, of course, really transforming from individual mobility to mass mobility. That's very, very important.
Right, madam, your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, madam, and here we must talk about generally the work of not only the legislature but also the judiciary per se, when we talk about ensuring that there is climate justice in the Pakistani society. So in this regard, we also understand that you have this landmark judgment, the famous Imrana Tiwana case. So could you please tell us that when we do talk about the work of Pakistan's judiciary, how efficient has it been when it comes to upholding climate justice? Because time and again we have seen that various climate justice movements and of course judgments have been passed, be it the Shaila Zia case, be it for that matter the Asghar Lighari case, or even your case for that matter. But the question then is that how effectively have we been able to implement the same?
I'd just like to refer here to Article 9 and 14 of the Constitution of Pakistan, the right to life and the right to dignity. And I believe that collectively we are all custodians, the judiciary, the legislature, the people, citizens, public and private sector. Now, having said that, I think that the judiciary has played a very important role in ensuring that the provision of the law is met. And we had a milestone suo moto judgment by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Pakistan about 15 years ago. It was the first in Asia, and it was to declare both sides of the canal and its green belts an urban canal, urban heritage park. And this was enacted by Parliament, and it was the first of its kind, milestone judgment which is being taught in universities all over the world. So when we talk of planning, we don't want planning that will divide the city into motorways and signal frees. We want planning for the people. We want green planning. We've had another landmark judgment in the signal free corridor. Now remember that we're feeding only 5 to 6% of the population, whereas the 92% are being neglected. And development is very good in its own right, but we have to find a balance.
And in this regard, it's very also important to mention the fact that when we do talk about development, public engagement is something which is prioritized, because a lot of times we might perhaps come across projects in which the public has a very important stake, but unfortunately they are not put on board. So how do you see all these development projects actually engaging the public at large too?
I think that the participatory democracy, the aspect of participatory democracy is something that we have embedded within our system and the constitution. And it is active and it is enacted. The only reason that I think we sometimes fall short is that it is not structured. We often find that there's firefighting, there are ad hoc interventions. And so I would come back again to policies and implementations and master plans that ensure that the implementation of the law and the legislature are people friendly, where people can come in and talk about their needs and what they want and how it's affecting them. And this is actually a method which will ensure that the 3 tiers of government, which is the federation, the province and the local government, act together, where they bring grassroots.
And there is harmonization even in our laws and
Absolutely.
policies, because that you
Absolutely.
see is again a very important issue that we do need to address. I'll take you on board in this regard. So when we do talk about development, something which Madam very rightly so mentioned, another aspect of this is that we encourage industries and businesses to engage in developmental projects. But then a question then arises is that are they or are they not doing so, keeping in mind the environmental cost of the same? So how do you see overall industries and businesses managing, of course, their profitability, their economic growth, alongside being equally climate conscious?
Well, yes, my industries need to be very productive. We need, more exports, and we need to generate our own products. So that is, that is imperative. That is mandatory for our economic prosperity, for the economic prosperity of the country. But also, they must install green energy, green technology, renewable energy resources, and technology transfers can be done, from developed countries. Developed countries can assist us in developing country and our industries in transferring green technology. So that it can be of great
Clean
help.
and green technology,
Clean
as
and
they
green
do put it.
technology.
But then do you not feel here that yes, this is a responsibility which then vests on the developed world, and that is something that we will be touching upon. But then what about educators like yourself? I would really agree with what Madam said earlier on, that when we do talk about working on all these issues, it is of course a collaborative effort. And here I feel that educators like yourself, Pakistan's education system, it also has a very important role to play. What if you take on that responsibility of educating people at a primary school level about the importance of environment, about the importance of climate change, about the issue of smog? So how do you see Pakistan's education institutions doing just that?
Well, here I would say that you have very rightly put this thought, and I as a university lecturer, we usually conduct workshops on sustainable developmental goals, Millennium Developmental Goals, and of course you see that climate change and climate preservation, this is one of the most important topic when it comes to sustainable developmental goals. Many universities, including our university, they have aligned sustainable developmental goals in their curriculum. And many workshops and conferences are conducted. Students are talking about it. They can, they give their own individual presentations on this topic, and
And we also see very young people putting forward petitions in the courts in this way. I think you would be able to comment on this further, because we do see this increasing momentum of public interest litigation, where there is so much litigation on the issue of right to life, which of course encompasses environment and so many other issues too.
I'd just like to share
Please
something very interesting now that you've mentioned it. Yes, there's a lot of awareness, but when we were doing the Canal case, there was a 7-year-old girl who wrote a letter to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
I remember that.
And that was then taken up, and it was read in court that there is this is our next generation, and we have to save cities and make them cleaner and greener and more sustainable for generations to come. So anyone can get up and ask for what they believe is right. And I think that there's a lot of awareness, and I would agree that the educational sector, starting from age 2,
of course,
once you embed it in their minds, then they're changed
it
forever.
has to be there, and this is something that we didn't get to study, but of course when we talk about the reform of the education system too, this is that one angle which needs to be considered, on which I'll come to you, Ms. Momi. And here we must talk about working so as to strengthen and improve a sustainable development. What role can the private sector here play in this regard? And when it comes to giving the requisite incentives to various businesses, to various industries, what kind of incentives should be given to them so as to encourage them to move towards more eco-friendly practices?
To initiate sustainable urban development by including private sector. And the involvement of private sector and businesses is important not only for the larger good of communities, but also for businesses. Because when issues such as smog happens, of course, the life is disrupted. When life is disrupted, the markets are disrupted. Hence, it's very important that businesses and private sector is included. This is one reason. The other is that, of course, the businesses need to be incentivized, and one of the ways could be like at international level. If we see for climate change, we have these carbon credits which are given to those who try to reduce their emissions. Likewise, for pollution also, we can incentivize businesses by, of course, giving them some kind of relaxation on, let's say, taxes, and really building that in the policy. That those who pollute less or who do not pollute as such will be given priority in several things. So I think this is something that the city administration, the government at the provincial level, and of course the businesses have to come together and think about.
That's a very apt suggestion put by yourself, but for this, we need proper policies, we need proper structures in place. Madam, would you agree with me on that?
Yes, yeah, I think that the idea of incentivizing and giving subsidies, for example, when we converted the rickshaws from 2 to 4 stroke, it was done without a transition plan, and there was uproar, because it was immediate. So again, I would call it an ad hoc measure. I think that if there is a transition plan, and if the businesses are made aware of how important this is, and that they will not be asked to shut office or close down tomorrow, if we give them a plan and give an incentive, I'm sure that each business has a CSR. Each business today is trying to become greener.
Right.
So again, it has to be embedded within the policy and then enacted.
Not only businesses, madam, we also see industries like the fashion industry, if you see the aesthetic industries.
Absolutely.
There are so many things which are now actually very actively and proactively rather moving towards sustainability, because then you see this is not only a win-win for them from an economic, from profitable viewpoint, but also in terms of projecting a better reputation, a better brand image too. But with regards to Lahore, another question that I would want to put to you is the fact that when we do talk about Lahore, we understand that it has an extremely rich cultural heritage. So when it comes to working on urbanizing the city, but at the same time doing so, ensuring that yes, its historical significance is something that is not lost, how particularly do you feel can that balance be struck?
I think that Lahore, there are very few cities in the world that are 5,000 years old. You can count them on your fingers. And so cities like this, which are World Heritage cities, they need special attention when we begin to plan or make laws. We already have protective laws. And I think that it's very easy for both to go hand in hand, as is done all over the world. The important thing is to make that boundary and understand where our heritage lies, and then the land use plan that will begin to allow commercialization, which does not disrupt or disturb the heritage that we have. We have many UNESCO Heritage World Sites, and have been representing Pakistan for them at UNESCO and creating awareness all over the world, and people are thrilled. They can't believe, how rich our history is.
That's right. Coming towards you, another angle on which I would want to touch is the fact that when we do talk about Pakistani media's role, we do understand that yes, Pakistani media has had that very important role of not only educating people, but informing people about so many issues that they don't know. And in this, we must not overlook the fact that social causes are extremely important. So when it comes to issues like the environment, be it that of smog or for that matter climate change, how do you feel has a Pakistani media been able to give ample and adequate screen space to the same?
Well, media is playing a pivotal role, a significant role in creating mass awareness, and that is the only solution, I must say. That is the from here the solution starts towards addressing climate change. You see, mass awareness is created by the media. They talk about data, they talk about the air quality index, they talk about the different stations across the city, particularly city like Lahore. What is the quality of air quality, what is the air quality, and then our government, and they step in and they start working towards it, and they start chalking out some policies to reduce or to address climate change.
But then you see, this is perhaps only to the extent of electronic media. What about print media? What about social media? And then of course we also cannot ignore that we have dramas too, because Pakistani society as it is, we are addicted to drama. So when we do talk about so many other social issues, why not environment per se? This is perhaps something which dramas also need to pick up then.
Well, that's a very good point actually, and I personally believe that yes, dramas need to have different subjects, and climate is a very important subject that they can talk about, let alone society. Of course, there are different societal problems which dramas generally highlight, and but yes, that's a very good point, and through this debate and through this discussion, different script writers get to know that yes, climate and climate change can be a very good topic
for different, particularly basically the new climate crisis. Coming towards you, madam, and moving towards the end of the show. So when it comes to wrapping up today's conversation, I think it's very important that we also talk about some of the initiatives which the Punjab caretaker Chief Minister Mohsin Naqvi Sahab has taken with regards to signalling closures of educational institutions and then ensuring that markets, they open after a certain time. But when it comes to changing our societal mindsets, when it comes to changing our societal attitudes, what responsibility lies on us? Because you see, there's only so much that the state can do.
Absolutely. I think that life in Lahore has been disrupted and come to a halt in many ways, and the government is trying very, very hard to do something about this, and we appreciate the efforts of the government. What I would like to add here is that let's come to solutions and remedies that can be enacted with consistency. And I'm very happy to share that we have made a very comprehensive integrated action plan which we are ready to share with the government and the Chief Minister, and we hope that it can go to Parliament and be enacted, and then a deadline be given for it to be implemented.
Right. But so madam, what does this plan actually include?
This plan is to combat pollution, air pollution at all levels, and it's very comprehensive. Like I said, it's very scientific, and I can go into more detail maybe another day. But we would love to share this, and this is an effort. This will then be a collective effort.
Of course, and it has to be a collective effort, because you see, environment is something which we all mutually share. It is something on which we all have a mutual interest. So collaborations are definitely the way forward.
And I just want to add here that this is the people of Lahore and Pakistan who come together pro bono. We're just doing it because we want better cities, and we would urge the government, to come forward, and we will share this with them. And it's an amazing plan, and it can clean Lahore within a few months. So we're ready to roll on that. And yes, I think these are the solutions, where if we can structure the immediate, mid and long term, we will, like China did it. China is at an AQI of 35 to 40, whereas it was over 800.
Exactly. So basically the will needs to be there in this regard, effective collaborations too. Coming towards you, Ms. Marianne, before we conclude today's show, so what role do you feel can the international community, more particularly the developed nations, play in this regard when it comes to helping countries like Pakistan switch towards a cleaner and of course a greener technology?
International community and international organizations are already working a lot on this issue to address climate change, and particularly starting off with the UNFCCC, and there are different agreements conducted under this particular treaty. UNFCCC is an international treaty which basically aims to address climate change issues, and under it we have Kyoto Protocol, Montreal Protocol, Paris Climate Accord, and the CFC, which is basically the Climate Protection Fund. So you see, these international community, the developed communities can actually help in technology transfer to the developing countries.
Also in capacity building and assistance otherwise.
Even in many universities nowadays, we see that they are looking out for different alternative options other than only the burning of fossil fuels. So you see research and development is currently happening in different universities, particularly in the engineering fields. So they are working on it already. Yes.
Right, madam, your point is noted. Coming towards you, Momi, and before we conclude today's show, my last question to you would be that if we were to then wrap up today's conversation, what message would you give to the young people out there with regards to their very important role, that too in tackling not only climate change but also this smog crisis? Because you see, there's so much that young people out there can do, be it in terms of leading very important awareness campaigns, be it for that matter advocating for policy reform.
We also need to look at the role of young people. In innovation, so that we can come up with alternatives of development models that we already have. So in that, innovation is very important, and young people have that energy, that talent, that thinking, that fresh mind, where they can come up with ideas. The other thing is that they can be involved in awareness raising and really changing practices. And I would go down to adolescents or young people, like children, because it's very important that when young people, younger, lot is kind of included in awareness raising, then the impact is much more than when you do it with an adult. The third thing that young people can really do is to change their own behavior and behavior of their peers. Because one is awareness, which is just for the sake of telling what the issues are and how can. But the second level of awareness is behavior change, which is really impacting the way the actions of a single individual, how it is impacting, and how change has to be brought at individual level. So that they can do through their peers, through themselves acting upon it, and bringing in trend things that can reduce smog and issues like smog. Because shifting from, let's say, carbon intensive transportation to maybe cycling or transport, or really sharing cars, for example, pooling in for cars. So really using one car, so 3 friends can go on one car rather than each one coming on separate cars. So I mean, things like these can be kind of implemented.
Also, and little things like reducing our waste, or for that matter planting trees, there's definitely so much scope for young people to actually even lead climate change movement, something that we do see happening in the Western jurisdictions, especially with examples of Greta Thunberg with us. On which note I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, Ms. Imrana. Thank you so much, Ms. Mariha, and thank you so much, Ms. Momi, for your precious time today. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about smog as it does exist in the Pakistani society, more particularly in Punjab. We also spoke about the various measures that the Punjab caretaker government has taken in this regard. And of course, what responsibility then lies on us as a very responsible community to also do our bit to give back to the society. Whereas, of course, there's no denying to the fact that, we do have progressive laws and policies on paper so as to address, and of course, so as to ensure that we all get our right to life. What we do need to ensure is, of course, the fact that there is successful and effective implementation of the same. And for this, we definitely need greater public awareness and, of course, greater community engagement. Thank you for watching The Society. Until next time, take care and Lahore'S.